It's also worth noting that in the 1920s, because we're not out of the 20s yet. I didn't realize there was this much to talk about with the 1920s, but we're still not out of the 20s yet. The stock market comes into existence in the 1920s. Another one of the greatest mistakes of the 20th century. But it's this, hey, why don't we let some people buy a portion of our company? Like, say we split our company into 100 pieces, and we let 100 different people buy a portion of this company. Then as the company becomes more profitable, those become more valuable, and they can get rich purely off of our success. So a lot of people buy into it because it's a get-rich-quick mentality. And a lot of people who maybe otherwise wouldn't do that buy into it because it's a get-rich-quick mentality. A lot of them don't actually really fully understand how businesses work.
Mm-hmm. But there is risk there.
All they know is that you've got that ticker in the corner that, makes a happy noise every now and again, and then you feel pretty good about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And because every time a new technology or a new system is introduced, it is immediately just abused. The stock market gets abused. Like, to the point where people are buying and selling and buying and selling and buying and selling, and we're buying and selling so much so fast that one day in 1929, all of a sudden, buy what? Sell to who? Everything comes to a standstill. The reason it's called an economic crash, the reason it's called the crash of 1929, imagine if you will, a train going at 90 miles an hour and the conductor suddenly pulls the emergency brake. Or, all of a sudden, you can't go any farther. There's just a wall. There is nothing on that train that will be the way it was before. That's what happened in 1929.
To any economic people in the comments who are going to get grumpy and say something because that's not the best description, you're not wrong, but don't miss the fort. Get the larger point.
That's also exactly what happened to the entire world. Because so much was put into the stock market. The government was starting to rely heavily on the stock market for its wealth. Other countries were starting to rely on the United States stock market for their wealth. So much stock, if you can forgive the play on words, was put into the market that when all of a sudden there is no more stock to buy and nobody else to sell it to, well, now what do we do? And it happened like that.
As crashes can do.
It was just gone. So now, every company's stock is now so valuable that it's worthless. And all of a sudden, now everyone is a pauper. You could have been living in the mansion yesterday. Not anymore. Within a month, you have already sold all of your furniture. You've already sold your house for probably less than 1/100th of what it is worth, just so you can have something to eat, just so you can buy a loaf of bread for your children.
Well, even beyond the stock market too, this is, like you said earlier, this is a period of decadence. So when I think about the modern world,
so a lot of wealth is being generated and then immediately wasted.
Well, it's being generated and being put into where? You've got rich people that are definitely going to get richer. But even beyond the stock market, look at what's happening today. If you're a normal American, you're kind of making ends meet. You can't afford the number of kids you might want to have. You're still going to go get the car that you need. And you're probably going to get a more expensive car than you want. And you're going to put way too much down on a car loan. And you're going to get the new phone and add on to this list a number of other things. And a lot more of you are not even going to have $1,000 in savings. I assume that some of that type of behavior is going on in the decadent period that is the 20s.
It's even worse in the 20s.
Yeah.
because the working class is being worked so hard they can't even put anything back.
Yeah.
And the upper class is basically taking all of their excess wealth and using it on excess.
Then what happens when all of a sudden you have no more
They're like,
income?
we got the money, why not spend it?
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens when the money stops rolling in?
It's kind of like Cinderella Man, isn't it?
That's exactly what happens in
Yeah.
Cinderella Man. That movie starts in 1928.
Yep. They're
Then
having a
the
great
very next
time in a
scene
nice
is in
house.
1931.
And then they're not in the nice house.
Yeah, they're in that really nice house. He's got that really nice bathroom. And this, again, another one of my favorite movies ever. Definitely in my top 10, which is weird because 3 of those movies are starring Russell Crowe. But anyway,
He deserves it.
he does deserve it. He's a good actor. So, yeah, the movie Cinderella Man is a very good illustration. Because his manager, his fight manager, played by Paul Giamatti in that movie, is also a really good illustration because he has sold every ounce of furniture he has just to put up a front that he is still successful,
Yeah.
just so he can pretend to still have something.
Yeah. Without spoiling anything, there's a really good scene that culminates in the revealing of that. So,
Oh yes, oh yes, and it's kind of like that, and that actually happened to the Brannigan family. Battling Jim Brannigan was the champion, best paid boxer in the world. He was a very, very rich man. Then the market crashes, and he has to live in a basement with, what was it, 5 children?
I can't remember that
I
detail,
think
but
it's 5. And he and his 5 children have to live in a basement. And he can barely make any money fighting anymore
yeah, because
because
he's going to go pay the scene.
the first reaction is, well, now we have to, allocate all physical resources to our absolute needs. But even then, because another result of the crash of the 1920s, or the crash of 1929, so all these companies that just said, oh, we're going to maximize our profit and maximize our growth with all these factories that we're going to be producing stuff in, they are now no more because their stock has become worthless and so has their product. So they've all gone out of business, and now the executives of that company are joining everybody else in the crowd at the docks screaming for a job.
Hmm.
But the guy who runs the docks can only afford to hire 3 people that day.
Again, go watch Cinderella Man if you haven't.
Go watch Cinderella Man. It's the absolute best depiction of like the end of the Roaring Twenties and at least the earliest half of the Great Depression.
Mm-hmm.
Because also what's happening at this time, prohibition is still in full effect at this time. And when you prohibit something, you make it more enticing, particularly if it was something that was legal before.
Yep, something has to fill that void.
And alcohol is kind of the only thing that is still in just as ready supply as it always was. So imagine being, even if you managed to get to the 1930s, not broken by the First World War, not affected by the Spanish flu, not broken by a factory in any kind. Say you're a cobbler or something and you manage to keep your business alive the whole time. By the time the crash comes around and in the Great Depression, you still have nothing. And now, because your job is not absolutely positively necessary for survival, because your job is not related to food and shelter, or maybe even not even shelter, just food.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're out on the street and your entire family is out on the street, and that happened basically overnight. So there's trauma from that. Because now you as a man feel like a failure because you can't provide for your wife or your children.
And so you might
You
be
have to
sitting there
go
thinking,
you have to go and beg a man that can barely afford to pay the people that he has now to give you a job so you can barely afford to put bread in your children's mouths.
yep. So you might be sitting there thinking, well, okay, that all sucks. Obviously, like there is no arguing with that. But at least if you make the food, like food, there will always be a need, so you can survive that, right?
Nope.
Then, nope.
So who makes the food? Farmers. And who was like the most recent person or group to be affected by the Industrial Revolution? Farms. So this is also at the time, the 20s, and then into the 30s is when we start seeing these massive industrial farms that are, they use great big, noisy, and smelly equipment to basically harvest as much as humanly possible, to provide as much food as they possibly can, so that, again, we can maximize our profit. But the farm equipment in those days, it might be better now. Although I've driven past a field in Missouri at plowing time, it's not a whole lot better. Is so aggressive to the soil that it throws dust up into the air. So much that you can't even see. And if you live in a rural area and you have driven down the highway at plowing time when it's been relatively dry, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I came up to Minnesota for a wedding in May, and I had to drive through Iowa for part of it. And there were sections of road that I could not see at all because dust was being kicked up by the combine in the field. That much dust was being kicked up. So much of that, and on top of that, the railroad and other city expansion projects have cut down so many trees that it drastically reduces the oxygen levels, on top of how much dust and particulate is being kicked up in the air by industrial farms, that it creates the Dust Bowl, which is basically when Missouri and Kansas and Nebraska and Iowa, which are 4 of the most major agricultural states in this country, and even into parts of Illinois and Indiana and Ohio, the most major agricultural states in this country got turned into deserts. Effectively, it was the worst in Missouri and Kansas and Nebraska and Iowa. These states got turned into wastelands. Nothing wanted to grow. So now food is at a shortage. And Texas has the same kind of problem. Texas is agriculture in kind of every sort of way. If you don't have enough wheat crop, if you don't have enough vegetative crop, you also cannot feed your livestock. So then the livestock start dying. So then there's also famine.
Then somehow, if you've avoided all of the other trauma we've talked about, I mean, you didn't avoid this one, no matter where you were. A famine literally affects everybody.
Yeah, even if it's not directly affecting your stomach, it is affecting at least your mind. Because you're basically looking out your window every day and you see nothing.
Yeah.
And you see people hungry and starving.
I just think of the farmers too, and how I talked about hell last week as like being the place of ultimate loneliness. Like if you're in a rural community, I don't know, there's something about that image that rings true for that setting, where all there is dust and you can't grow a darn thing.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you have? You got whatever potatoes are left in the root cellar. That's what you got.
You eat literally whatever you can find.
Yep.
And some are able to grow some things. The Dust Bowl is not ubiquitous, but again, famine affects literally everyone.